What has this motley crew of construction workers who you would never normally give a second glance passing in the street got to contribute to D-Day? Surely building a hospital or school or even a road should come much later when the fighting was all over? In fact, this U.S. unit was an integral part to the success of Operation Overlord. By mid-1941, the mission of the aviation engineers expanded beyond runway repair and light runway construction. Planners agreed to give the U.S. Air Force enough men and equipment to construct their own heavy-duty bases in forward areas. The 834th Engineer Aviation Battalion was activated in May 1940 as part of the 9th Engineer Command. Writing in 2002, Robert Rice says, "The 834th Engineering Aviation Battalion was my outfit. At the time the Army, which usually is a snafu outfit, got it sort of right with me since I had worked beforehand with my father on steel tanks in the oil fields in Pennsylvania where I grew up. With this background of civil engineering, I was well placed." Much of the equipment required can be seen in the film rolling through the picturesque villages of northern Hampshire to the docks at Southampton. Besides the buildup of personnel and equipment in anticipation of the cross-channel invasion, the Engineering Aviation Battalion also constructed the bases used by the 8th Air Force prior to D-Day. By May 1944, the plane-crowded airfields were more than double their capacity, and on October 24, 1943, the 1st Air Force troops arrived, so the battalion were obliged to evacuate their self-built huts, 4 tents, and were seldom billeted under a solid roof again until the war ended. Top priority in France for the Engineering Aviation Battalion was 2 emergency landing strips to be prepared in the first 24 hours, 1 each on Utah and Omaha beaches. Overall, the aim was 35 advanced landing grounds constructed during the first 40 days was to accommodate 58 squadrons. Unlike the permanent airfields built in the United Kingdom for strategic bombing, the tactical combat airfields in France were temporary, often improvised airfields to be used to support the advancing ground troops. Once the front line moved out of range, new airfields were built and squadrons moved up closer to the ground forces, leaving those in the rear to be abandoned or for support use. In the film, the convoy is seen arriving at Southampton Dock Gate 8 of the Western Docks, which can still be seen today. The bulldozer is seen unloaded from a trailer alongside berth 101 with the Solent Mills, now demolished, in the background. The heavy machinery is seen loaded onto an LST. The same film follows the unit aboard the LST crossing the English Channel before waiting to disembark off the Normandy coastline. At Utah Beach by 10:50, the 1st Squad, 3rd Platoon of Company A of the 819th Engineer Aviation Battalion landed. When the ramp was lowered, the engineers waded the final 200 yards to the beach in waist-deep water with tractors and graders following. Men and equipment dispersed on the beach with only 1 casualty and reached the construction site by 1800 hours. And since the original site for the airstrip they were to build was still in enemy hands, found another area right above the cliffs, and by June 8 planes were landing and taking off. These were the first Allied planes to operate in France since its fall, and for their efforts they were awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, which reads, "The 834th Engineer Aviation Battalion is cited for outstanding performance of duty in action against the enemy from June 6 to July 16, 1944. Advance elements of the 834th Engineer Aviation Battalion were scheduled to land on the Normandy beachhead at H+4 hours on D-Day with the mission of constructing an emergency landing strip, but because of intense enemy activity the initial group was not able to begin its work until D-Day +1. Finding that the ground forces had not yet taken the site upon which the unit was to construct an emergency landing strip, the battalion promptly reconnoitered the terrain available, and within the space of 16 hours a new site had been located and the landing strip made serviceable. Without pause the unit continued to develop the initial strip into a 3,400-foot landing strip which was usable on June 7 by transport aircraft evacuating wounded. For the entire period June 6 to July 16, this strip handled the major portion of transport air traffic between the continent and the United Kingdom. During the first weeks, the engineers averaged 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Units withdrawn from construction work to perform maintenance work on other fields considered their I0-hour workdays as a rest. They were able to keep up their long hours and maintain a high morale because results were clearly and immediately evident as planes took off and landed as soon as the runways were completed. By the end of the war in Europe, they had constructed or rehabilitated 241 airfields.